welcome to another lawnfawn video. Today we are introducing our stitched garden border and our little flowers die, so let's go ahead and check them out. First up, we have our stitched garden border, and it comes with the garden border, of course, and then these cute little veggies. So we have a turnip and a carrot, and then kind of just some little greenery to help you set the scene. And all of those can be tucked into those little hills, which you'll see in a bit. Then we have our little flowers die, and I love this die so much. We have tulips and daisies in 2 different sizes and a cute little flower pot. And this die was actually sized perfectly to work with the garden border too. Then there you can see the little lip for the flower pot and just how cute this die set is. So first up, we're going to be creating a card with the little flowers die set. So I am creating a card base here, just scoring it in half and folding it. And then I'm going to add some sticky note cardstock to this, which is such a happy yellow. It just reminds me of spring, so I'm going to layer that on top. I'm picking out some Gotta Have gingham paper, and I'm going to use kind of this sort of lilac type color here, and I am going to die cut that with a 4-bar stitched rectangle. I'm also going to die cut a piece of craft cardstock, and I'm going to trim that down, and that's going to be the floor or the table for my little pot of flowers I'm creating. So I'll layer that right on top. I also used a lacy border to cut some white cardstock, and I'm going to trim that down to be this nice thin little piece, and I'm kind of imagining that being kind of like the tablecloth on my table. So I think it's really cute and just has this really pretty detail to it, and that little stitch line is just beautiful and kind of coordinates with the rectangles. After I trim off any excess, I'm going to use my new Thanks border die, and I'm going to die cut some white cardstock twice and then some sticky note cardstock once. And what I'm going to do is actually layer all of these die cuts together. So I'm using my glue tube there to add a thin line of glue, and I'm going to stack them together so that this sentiment kind of becomes almost like a 3-dimensional puffy sticker or something. So I'm going to layer all those pieces, and then it'll have the two-tone of the yellow and white, which I think is really, really cool too. So now that I've got those stacked up together, I'm going to add a little more glue to the back and then lay that onto my table there, my little craft table that we created on the card, and then I can go ahead and trim off any excess again. I am going to die cut some little flower centers, and I'll also be die cutting some white daisies. So I'm going to die cut a bunch of those there. And I'll also cut both sizes of stems from some Cilantro cardstock. And then I'll cut my little flower pot there from some peacock cardstock. So I want to layer these flowers, but I want them to be dimensional. So I'm going to put a little foam square there right in the center of my flower, and then layer the other flower offset so that it gives this nice kind of 3-dimensional looking daisy, which I think is really, really cute. So I'm going to repeat that same idea with all of my flowers there, adding that little foam square to the center and then putting my other flower on top, kind of offset so that it fills in all of those little petals. Next up, I can use a little glue and add my flower centers in there that I cut from sticky notes so that it coordinates with my card base. Then next, I'm going to take my flower pot and I'm going to add some adhesive to the back of that flower pot. And you'll see that that die has a little slit that it creates for you, and that's so that you can tuck those little flower stems inside. So I'm going to kind of arrange my flowers with just the flower stems, and once I like how they're looking, I can then add a little bit of glue to the tops of those stems and layer my cute little daisies on top. There is just something about daisies. Oh my gosh, they're just so cute. I love white daisies. So I just love kind of arranging them and feeling like I'm making my own little flower arrangement that I can't kill later on. So here I'm going to take the little lip of the flower pot and layer that on top, and it gives it kind of a little dimension. And then I'll go ahead and add some foam squares to the back of my whole little arrangement there. Next, I'm going to take that pattern paper that we worked on earlier, and I'm going to layer that onto my card base. And then I can go ahead and layer my flower pot on top of that. And this is a relatively simple card to do. I would make like, 3 or 4 of these at once. I kind of wish I had actually, because then I would have a nice little stash of thank you cards. And I think this card would just make anybody smile. I just love those little flowers so much. So next up, we are going to be using the stitched garden border, and I'm going to die cut it from some chocolate bar cardstock. So I'll die cut that out there, and you'll see those cute little mounds of dirt that it creates. And then I'm going to use the coordinating simple stitched hillside die. So all of those hills are the same and they coordinate, which is so nice because you can easily layer these pieces. Then I went ahead and die cut a bunch of those little veggies just out of white cardstock, and I'm going to use my Copic markers to give them color. You could cut them from colored cardstock or use some ink blending, but I just thought it'd be kind of fun to use my Copic markers, and it was really, really quick and easy too. So I colored in my little carrots and then my greenery, and then for the turnips, what I ended up using was VO1 and E51. I kind of Googled pictures of them and then try to match my markers to match it. So I'll go back with the little purple and then back with that tan color, and I think it looks really, really cool. Next, I can add some glue to the base there and then layer my pieces so that I'll have the greenery onto my veggies. I just love how cute they are turning out. So next up, I am going to be creating a card base, and I'm going to layer on some Perfectly Plaid spring color, and it's the daffodil paper, and I love it so much. It's my favorite. It's this gorgeous yellow plaid, and yellow is my favorite color, so it just makes me happy. Then I'm going to take all those pieces that I die cut earlier, and I'm going to ink the edges of them. So I'm taking some mermaid cardstock with some mermaid ink and just inking the edges just to give the cardstock like a little something because it was looking a little plain. So in this case here, I'm taking some walnut ink and just kind of sponging that on, and you can see it kind of makes it look like dirt, which I think is really, really cool. And then I'll repeat the same thing for my garden border piece, kind of starting off of the paper and then going onto it. And I feel like it just adds a little something. Sometimes I just want plain cardstock and sometimes I want just a little extra. Now, in this case, I want to make sure my little hills have ink blending too. So I'm kind of like sticking my finger through them and then trying to get to the top of them and inking them. And it's actually making those little hills stand out even more. So I'm going to layer a bunch of adhesive behind my hills so that I can tuck in my veggies and then make sure they kind of stick there since I've got that adhesive on the back. So I'm going to tuck them in kind of at varying heights just to make it look kind of cool and different. I love doing this. There's just something really fun about planting my veggies there. Now I can start to layer all of those cardstock pieces that we just inked. So I'm going to take my mermaid cardstock and layer that onto that yellow pattern paper. And then here I've got some thin foam adhesive. So I'm going to layer that one piece with thin foam adhesive, and then the next piece is going to have the thicker foam adhesive so that you'll just kind of have varying depths and heights. I'm taking some cute bunnies from our new Some Bunny stamp set, and I'm adding some adhesive to their little paws, and then I'm going to position them close to each other so it looks like they're both holding the carrot, which I thought was really, really cute. Once I've done that, I can flip them over and add some foam tape to the back of them and then layer them onto my little veggie scene here. Then I'm going to use a sentiment banner to cut some white cardstock, and I'm going to stamp it with "I care about you," which is a sentiment from somebody that makes me smile. So I'll stamp that on there and then layer that with some foam adhesive on as well. And I think this card is so cute. It's really sweet. Kind of, you can send a little encouragement to a friend when you're thinking about them, and it's just, I think it would make them smile. Next up, I am going to be creating a card inspired by a card by Elise. So I have die cut a ton of flowers here, and I'm going to layer them, putting a little glue in the center and then layering that flower on top. And to give them a little bit of dimension, what I'm doing is kind of bending the petals up a little bit on the flower that I'm going to put on top, just so that it has a little something going on and it's just not flat and plain. And then I can add my little glue in the center and layer those. I've used some sunflower cardstock, fake tan. We have guava, ballet slippers, sugarplum, peacock, and mermaid. So as I layer all those, I'm then going to add some little flower centers out of some storm cloud cardstock. So this is just so cute. And then we've got our little cilantro stems. So we're going to layer the flowers onto those stems and create kind of this cute little rainbow garden of daisies. Next up, I am using my quilted backdrop die in some white cardstock and then my really rainbow paper, and I'm going to layer that backdrop on top of the rainbow so that the rainbow colors peek through all of the little holes that the quilted backdrop die cuts. So I'm adding some glue in all of those little diamonds and then layering that on top of the pattern paper, and I think it is such a cool look. Here I have some paper bag cardstock, and I am going to die cut that with the stitched garden border. And so you'll see that paper bag is perfect for a kind of a dirt color. Next up, I'm going to be stamping a sentiment that is too low and I end up not liking and changing later, but you'll see that in a second. So now I'm adding some adhesive to the back again, and I'm going to start tucking in my little flowers into my flower garden. And I'm putting some of them in the little mounds and then some of them behind just to give varying heights. I kind of wanted it to look a little bit like a little zigzag, and so that's how I was able to get that look. Now here I have die cut a sentiment banner, but it is a bit too long. That die was too long for my card. So what I'm going to do is line up one end of the die, kind of cutting off and making it shorter. So I'm going to line it up, hold it in place with some tape, and then when I run it through my die cut machine, it's going to die cut that edge and make it look like I had the perfect sized sentiment banner die. Now I'm going to go ahead and stamp that same sentiment, which is a sentiment from the Some Bunny stamp set, which is just so sweet, and I'll stamp that on my little sentiment banner. Now I can add some glue and adhesive to the back of my little flowers and layer that on top of my little rainbow panel I created earlier. And here you'll see how that sentiment just looked, I don't know, it just looked really plain. I just didn't like it. So whenever I don't like a sentiment, I just cover it up with a banner and then somehow it works. So I'm just going to layer that banner right on top. And I really like it because it kind of brings the white of the quilted backdrop to the bottom, which is kind of cool too. And it fixes my too low of sentiment problem. So now I'm creating a standard size card base, 5.5 by 4.25, and I'm going to layer my cute little rainbow garden on top. And this card just makes me smile. I just love it. It's just so sweet. And I just love using die cutting this way. We have some amazing cards by the design team, and this is the card by Elise that inspired me to create my card, and it's just so gorgeous. I love this card by Lynette. She used our stripy backdrop to create this cool kind of lattice background for her flowers, which is awesome. I love how Jen put her little carrot stamped images into the garden border, which is so cool. And Nicole had the same idea too, so it's great for die cuts and for stamped images. Here is a gorgeous card by Elise where she combined the veggies and the flowers, and I think it looks just incredible. I love it so much. And then here, this card by Lizzie also shows those cute little carrots in our garden border, which is adorable. And then Yainea got really creative and created like a tall strip, and I think it's so cool, and I just love it so much. So I cannot wait to see what you guys create with garden border and little flowers, so make sure to share it with us. Thank you so much for watching, and have an absolutely amazing day. Bye!